Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of A Product of Proverb. I am your host, Joshua Fowler, sitting down with my co host and dad, Reverend Roy Fowler, here to discuss life. We're coming with another coronavirus episode as we're still kind of locked down at home and thinking of ways that we can continue to grow and improve our lives. Today's episode is going to be on influence. So, what influences you? What influences your thoughts, your actions? And thinking of worldly and biblical influences and the lessons we can learn from these influences. So, with that, we're going to jump into today's show. What's going on, Dad?
Not much, Josh. Just trying to deal with this. Shelter in place. Stay at home.
Speaking of staying at home, this is week 2 now of you working from home. How's that going?
I guess it's going okay. It's different. I think last week I only walked to the mailbox. That's as far as I went.
I told you what to do. We got 2 leashes.
No, I'm not going to walk those dogs.
Why won't you walk your dogs?
I used to walk them, but I don't know.
It's probably because Nala is 2 dogs now. If it was just Jack, she'd probably be okay with taking him for a nice little walk, but you know Nala's going to be a problem.
Well, I just think they get a lot of exercise running around in the backyard. And I did take them out in the back today, and they ran down by the creek and played around back there for a while. And then when they came back, they was pretty tired. So I don't think they need walking. They get a lot of exercise.
I hear that because when we do go down by the creek, they have that long strip with no trees where they just sprint back and forth and back and forth. Did they get in the water with you this
They
time?
didn't get in the water, no.
Last time I went down there, I actually got in the water. So, of course, Jax followed me in there. And poor little Nala, because Jack's a lot taller. So he was the part of the creek that it was a little higher. So it was just probably around his shoulders where his legs in. It had Nala about to her neck. I said, you don't have to come in, Nala, but Nala doesn't understand English like Jax does. But yeah, we're going to get into today's episode. As I said earlier, today's episode is influence. So we can take a couple different perspectives on influence, a couple different looks at influence. But as always, we have a proverb, as this is a product of Proverbs. So today we're going to look at Proverbs 15 and 22. My favorite for this particular verse is the New Living Translation. Plans go wrong for lack of advice, but many advisors bring success. King James Version says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. I think about wisdom, kind of the definition of the word wisdom to me, and what was told to me is the saying that a wise person learns from others' mistakes, while a foolish person has to make the mistake on their own to learn that same lesson. If you have counsel, if you have advisors, if you have mentors, if you have people that influence you and share knowledge with you, you're going to learn through their L's. You're going to learn through what they went through and what they wish they would have done better. They'll share that with you. So when you're standing in the same place they were at, you can know, let me go left, because if I go right, that's a rough road. So thinking, if you have more counsel, if you have more advisors, if you have more of the mentors, if you have more of those personal relationships, if you have relationships with your pastor, if you have relationships with your parents, with just different people that can give you advice, you have a better chance of succeeding. While if you go at it on your own, more than likely, it might not end up the same way, because you kind of do need expert advice. You do need someone that's been there, someone that, like you just said, has read the Hebrew, has done the extra study to understand the full context. So you kind of do need that advice and that counsel, and that is integral to your success, at least by Proverbs 15 and 22.
Well, you notice even in business, that same principle is used. All these different people have think tanks. It's where groups of people come together and hash things out. And you do much better there's wisdom in much counsel. It's just the way it is. And the simple person really is one that won't listen to anybody, thinks he knows it all. He's bound to fail and make mistakes. Not that you won't, even with counsel, but you have a much better chance of succeeding when you listen to people. And some people have expertise that you don't have. And it's just good to listen to other people, but you got to be careful of the people you listen to, because all counsel is not good counsel. All advice is not good advice. So you still got to weigh it out. But it's better when you got a whole lot of data to measure against and figure out than just going on your own. And it is really wise to listen to other people. We would be a whole lot further ahead if we would have listened and taken the advice that was given to us. But it's just kind of human nature, I guess, to have to learn things the hard way. You've heard people say, you got to just learn it the hard way. But you don't really have to learn it the hard way. But we kind of choose to do that.
And I also think part of that is the lesson does stick a little different when you went through it on your own. You feel that a little more. You might not make that same mistake again because you have a better understanding of what it costs.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you've heard someone else say what it cost them, you still may be, if you're wise, you'll still avoid that, but you might not be as extreme and staying as far away from that as possible. But then once you pay that price and you kind of understand, yeah, I don't want to pay that again. I don't want to do that again. I'm not trying to go through that again.
Yeah, kind of like when the parent would tell a little kid, don't touch that stove. It's going to burn you because it's hot. He's saying that because he knows it's hot. And if you touch it, it'll burn you. But what is that kid going to do?
Touch the stove.
And then he'll know. Now, you're not going to worry about him touching that stove after that. So I think it's kind of like that. Some lessons you'll have to just learn on your own. You got to learn it the hard way. But I guess the key to that is learning it.
That's the key to life, is learning.
No matter what. If you have to learn it the hard way, just learn it. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and then also a big thing you said was don't just take advice from anyone. And that's where the topic of today's episode came from. Influence isn't something that's inherently positive or negative. It can be either or. But you probably don't have 100% pure positive influences. You always have negative influences around you. It's kind of inevitable just because you can't control the family you're born into, the people that you may be around. You can't control where you're born, where you have to go to school at, the people that are your teachers, the people that are your neighbors. So you're going to have negativity around you. You've got to filter through that to get to the positive and then stick to and hold on that positive. But you can't think that it's just going to be all positive all the time. And you also have to be able to identify positive and negative. So it's very important when you think about, I can't take advice from everyone. I can't take everyone's counsel. You kind of have to be verified. I know we joked about it in previous episodes, but just the whole thing about accredited journalists. So previously.
Yeah.
And so Steve Jobs, when he met with the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, this was before the iPhones and all this stuff, he kind of told them, look, guys, you're losing news. You don't understand the internet. You don't understand how to modernize your platform, and no one is going to read newspapers anymore. And he kind of pitched them to let Apple help you and lead you through this. A couple of them did. On early iPods, you would have free access and like free trials to the New York Times.
Yeah.
But many of them, of course, blew it off, and you see the newspaper today. But the problem he identified was you're losing to bloggers. You have a full staff of people with journalism and English degrees, full staff of people who had studied the ethics of journalism, who have studied the structure of journalism, have studied and kind of went through the ranks of intern, entry level. These are real career journalists that people aren't listening to because they're listening to people with the blog, people on Facebook. People aren't even checking articles anymore. Do you notice on Facebook when people share links about news and breaking news, and it'll be like mail.uk.aus slash whatever? They'll
Mm-hmm.
share a fake link in a heartbeat. Not a Washington Post, not a Business Insider, not a AJC. No, they're sharing mynews.green.uk.
Yeah.
And they're sharing this, and people aren't fact checking it because we just look at headlines.
And we run with it. You remember a few weeks ago when they put that post about they're going to close up as of Sunday at 3 o'clock. Certain stores was going to be closed, and everybody was like just running with it. And that's what we do. It was a few years ago. I don't remember how many exactly, but the big saying was, "It's true because I read it on the internet." You remember hearing that? That was a big thing. It's true because I read on the internet. But as you're saying, that's not true at all. But that's what people are reading, and that's what people are getting. Uh, and whether you think so or not, what you hear has an influence. And you've got to be careful. That's why you got to be very careful and filter what you allow to come into you or come through your gate, because it will affect you. You got to be careful with that. Sometimes you have to just stop listening to all this stuff. Um, that's how it was years ago when it came to Christian material. Um, I wouldn't recommend certain books because you've got to understand where that person is. And see, we don't know anything about these people that we're listening to. You don't know their ideology. You don't know their goals, their objectives, what they're trying to do. And you've got to be careful even with people in your circle because they may give you advice, but you don't know where their head is. You got to be careful of the people you put in your inner circle because they will influence you. And sometimes they don't necessarily have the same goals and objectives that you have. And they'll give you their perspective on where they're going. And it's totally opposite of where you're going. And you got to be careful with that kind of stuff.
And you also got to think that material or financial success is not the only or even the main qualifier for your mentor or for someone to be able to give you advice.
Wisdom is that you will be able to process the information. You know, you don't take things at, point blank or just face value, but you process information. Too many times we don't do that. We just take it and run with it. But that's being simple. That's not being wise at all. Wisdom says, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me process this. And then you can make a better decision on where you should go.
I like what you said earlier when you said you got to have a database. So you got to have all of that data to compare that to. So when we look at Proverbs 15 and 22, and it says, plans fail for lack of counsel, the second half says, but with many advisors, they succeed. So you can't have one person that you're looking up to and listening to, and this is the only way you can go. It says they succeed with many advisors. When you have that database, say that this advice aligns with this advice. I also heard this person say the same thing. That's what I should do. This advice, I've never heard anyone else say that. I might not want to listen to that. So you got to have that database, which requires you to not be closed-minded. You have to be open-minded to what people can share with you, what people can teach you, what you can learn from people. And then once you open up, you receive it. Like if your hands closed holding on to what you got, you can't have anything. You can't get anything. So you got to think, open your mind to receive more information, but also guard your mind by analyzing that information that
Yes.
comes through. Sit at the gate and check and see, okay, I want to let this in. Nah, that can go. I want to let this in. But that's a practice that you have to do over time, being very aware, just self awareness, and also being very intentional about what you allow to influence you, because it does influence everything: your thoughts, your actions, your habits, your where you go, what you do, how you dress. This is all influenced by something. So if you're self aware and continually analyzing yourself and continuously analyzing the things around you and seeing, after I'm around this or after I listen to this, I feel like or act like that. After I'm around these people or I do these things, I feel this way or I do these things. And going through that process, you weed out the bad from the good. After I listen to this person, it usually goes well. After I listen to this person, it usually goes good. But that's just a continuous process that you'll always have to do, just being on top of what's influencing you.
I think when you said you've got to be intentional, you've got to have an idea of what's important to you, and you must have identified your own values, so you'll know what to process this. What are you using? If you don't know where you want to go or what direction you're trying to go in, then you won't know if this will fit in that or not. So a lot of us don't have a clue as to what, you know, you'll ask somebody, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just hanging around. You just can't live hanging around. You got to want to go somewhere and have some goals, some objectives. You got to have some plans. You got to have an ideal. You've got to have an ideal in order to really process this information correctly. You have to have an idea of your own, or else you'll just be going around in circles. You'll listen to this, you'll listen to that, you'll listen to this, you're going here, you're going there, you're going here, you're going there, and you finally stop and said, "Where am I?" Because you've been going in every direction. You don't know where you are, and you've listened to this, you've listened to that. You can't do that. I just say you just got to be. You got to be. Wisdom says you don't do that, but you got to know yourself and have some type of clue and some type of goal. You don't have to have it planned out to a T, but you got to have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to accomplish and what's important. You got to set some priorities in your own life. And then when you get counsel from other people, it'll help you go in the direction that you want to go in. And I think that's very key. But it's so many things. We're talking about influence. It's so many things that is out there that's, and it has an effect on you. You just look all around and it comes at you from every direction. And you've got to guard yourself against some of this stuff. It'll have you all messed up if you're not careful. But I like your proverb, though, because you got a bunch of people, maybe not a lot of people, but you got people that you will listen to. In my experience, I found people that succeeded or were successful was those that were willing to admit they didn't know it all and didn't have it all. You'd be surprised at the amount of people, and I think it's really a person with low self-esteem, the ones that are very, very defensive and they get offended whenever you try to give them advice, and they're simple-minded, and they end up not going anywhere. But I've found in my experience, those people that understood they didn't have it all and know it all, but were willing to listen and learn. I saw that when I was in Bible college. It was amazing. Because I'm there and I'm a book and I'm just a sponge. I'm open because I want to know, I want to learn, I want to grow. And then you had others there that wanted to debate the professor. on the book that he wrote. I mean, he wrote this book that he's teaching, and you're going to tell him it ain't right, and you got a different answer, and you want to debate with him, and close-minded, and you'll never grow. You've got to have people that you're willing to listen to, because there's some people that can help you. That's just key. And some people have that some kind of complex. They want people around them. They don't want anybody around them that's smarter than they are. But I think it's important that you get people around you that's smarter than you are, because they'll make you smarter.
Now that's very, very, very important, because if you are always the smartest person in the room, if you are always the coolest person in the room, if you are always the richest person in the room, that's not really an accomplishment. That means that other people of that status, other people of that stature don't really respect you. Are you really that? Because the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. So if you are really rich, other rich people will be around you, will be drawn to you, and your energy, that'll be natural. If you are really cool, cool people hang with cool people. Cool people don't hang with lame people. If you are really smart, you won't enjoy not hanging around smart people. So if you're always the smartest in the room, I feel like you probably intentionally finding dumb rooms to go into so you can look smarter. You are always the richest or the coolest or the flyest person there. Where your priorities at? Are you there for attention? Are you really kind of who and what you say you are? Or are you trying to be who and what you say you are? Do you want to be who and what you say you are? And you have to be self-aware to make that analysis and have that process with yourself. And once you have that process, you'll understand influence. What influenced me to be this way? What influenced me to want to be the richest person in every room I go to? What influenced me to want to show my wealth? What influenced me to want to be the smartest person? What influenced me to want to stand out? Why can't I just be me and be great? Why do I need to be special and be great? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. And once you look at those influences, really go deep. Say, not only music, movies, TV, but who influenced me? Who in high school influenced me? Who in middle school? A lot of y'all, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but kind of forgot a lot of middle school outside of your 2 or 3 best friends. Those experiences probably shaped you. Like, what happened? What fights did you get into? What relationships did you have? In elementary school, your cousins, your aunts and uncles, these type of things are things that influence who and how you are today. And they don't have to influence who and how you are your whole life. If you analyze and figure out what influenced you to be who you are, you know what strings to start cutting so that you can be who you want to be instead of pretending to be who you want to be. But that's the process of kind of analyzing the influence on your life. I think that the best thing that we can do is be a guard to our mind. Stand there at the gate and be strict. Say, I'm not letting this thought in. I'm not letting this influence in. I'm not letting this piece of media in. I'm not letting this bad habit in. I'm not letting this person in. I'm not letting this bad advice in. I'm not letting this bad information in. Oh, that's good information. Come on. Oh, that's feel good. Come on in. Oh, that's someone that gives me good energy. Come on. Oh, that's someone that is just kind of, yeah, nah. Go to the left. You got to stand guard and really protect your mental. Like, you got to protect your mind, because your mind is your life. Your mind determines your life. Your mind dictates your life. So if you're letting anyone control your mind, you're letting anyone control your life. You control your mind, then you control your life. And you control your mind by controlling the influences that you take in.
Yeah, the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So what you believe determines your behavior for the most part. And a lot of people, and I think one of the things that's very important for all of us is to be honest with ourselves and do an honest assessment of ourselves. And, do it. If you do it, don't ask me to do it for you. You do it for yourself so you can really be true, because you're not trying to let somebody else know just, how you're going to grade or score on this, but you do it for yourself. And then you take some time and really decide on what do you want to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I think all of that will be some things that you'll have to use as a filter. As information come in, as influences come in, then you've got to weigh it against what you want. And if it don't fit in with your plan or your goals or your ideals, then you got to let it go. But unless you know what those are, you really don't know what to hold on to. And if you're not really open enough, then you won't accept advice from people that's trying to help you. You'll get offended by it because you're really simple in your thinking, and that's just the way it is. We've got to be real. We've been taught to put up a facade and man up and do this and do that, but you've got to be real with you. And I think that's very important, because these influences are going to keep coming, and you don't want to be like a kite, that's moving by the wind, and however the wind blows, that's where you go. And you don't want to do that. So it's important that you do a self-assessment of yourself and just be real and be honest, and make the necessary changes, and then stick with it. You've got to kind of stick with the plan. If you stick with the plan, you'll find yourself more successful.
For sure. And I think that's a good place for us to wrap up this episode. On this fine Easter Sunday, we have Product of Proverbs, episode 16. This is influence, controlling what influences you, controlling what influences your mind, and understanding that what influences your mind is what influences your life. Looking at Proverbs 15 and 22, understanding that with many advisors, your plan will succeed. So make sure that you reach out to gain if you don't already have. But if you have, be sure to cultivate those relationships with good advisors, with good mentors. I believe that my mentors, the people that outside of you, the people that raised me, are the reason who I am today. Starting with your brother, Jason, for sure, one of the biggest mentors, guided me throughout all of middle school, high school, college, and then handed me off to my frat brothers, my older frat brothers. You got John, you got Dez, you got Jazz, you got Deke. You have all of these different people that are not significantly older than me, like your brother, but also not really my peer, that are a couple steps ahead in life that can help me navigate through where I am. And like you said, you in Bible college, I've been a sponge, been all ears. I got notebooks with notes from interviews in 2016, not even interviews, but phone conversations with them as my mentors. And to this day, we're still best of friends, still text. And it kind of shows in my life that I was intentional about the advisors that I had. And then also the influence. So understanding that you got to pick good ones. I had some bad advisors, some bad influences throughout the way. They're not here today because they don't do the things that I do now. They don't live the way that we live now. It's kind of one of those things where once you realize what's good and bad, you have to make that choice to keep doing good. So continue to monitor your influences and cultivate those relationships with those mentors, because they will pay dividends throughout the years. And then once you get to the position, you be the mentor for the next generation, the next person, through whatever that is, however that is. But as always, thank you for tuning in to A Product of Proverbs, this weekly podcast between me and my dad. Thank you, Dad, for sitting down with me for another episode.
It is my pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. Continue to subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify and anywhere else that you like to listen to podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Product of Proverbs. But with that, we're going to sign off and we'll catch you next week.